maybe 10.
I was told 15.
A bit late. Food came late, mate. So
someone got the shot collar so we can get him off at the end.
So this is our grandfather Joe. He's got all the knowledge. But listen up, and he'll help you out catching some of the crows around.
Right, a lot of this stuff that I'm probably preaching to a few people here that probably know everything. So Dave's my barrel girl. For those who don't know, this is Dave Stickland. Right, so
too much.
Yeah, that's just too much information, Dave.
It's on camera. It's all good.
First off, the gear. So you're going to need a loop, and a few of you bought them. The best loops to get are these adhesive ones, and the way you can tell is they've got like a little orange handle on them. The reason why they're the best, there are other loops on the market, but what happens with this one is the loop maintains its integrity when you open it up. What you'll find with the cheaper ones is, see if I can get it to do with this, they'll actually twist out of shape, and it buckles like that. And that becomes very awkward then to pull over a crayfish, but it's much easier to do with the cheaper loops. So this, and also this is also invented by a WA person. And he's got
the yellow ones are the same brand, Joe. They're just made overseas.
As long as they got this little ball.
Yeah, they got the yellow ball.
Yeah,
they're also made by the same pattern.
Yeah, but always test it out and make sure that it that it opens to a natural loop like that, because that's what you want. Is that sort of look like everybody can see that, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. What else have we got here? Torch. These days I just go with one torch, but some people use two. They'll have one on their wrist, and the other place is to have a torch on the loop. And this means that you can then see the crayfish as you're going into a cave, particularly a dark cave. You won't need it if the cave's quite shallow, but if you're looking for big crays, generally they're going to be in darker areas, so you will need a torch. And by putting it on the loop, it leaves the hands free to move the loop back and forth. Third, snorkel. Now this is quite important. A lot of people don't appreciate this. If you're used to having a stiff snorkel, you go diving in caves with a stiff snorkel, and even though it's not in your mouth, it'll catch on the roof of the cave. Get a flexible snorkel. I actually use a flexible one just for cray diving for that reason. It's pretty annoying when you're running out of air and you've got this huge cray and it's like clinging to the rocks and you're just trying to rip yourself out of the hole, and next thing you know the snorkel gets jammed up in the ceiling somewhere. It's pretty annoying if it doesn't bend. Fins, you can stick with your carbons. I've sort of gone away from using the plastic ones, so I just use the carbons. The thing with carbons, just be very careful when you go into a cave, when you come out of a cave. Don't smash them around because they will break and they will scratch. Gloves, snug fit. With your wetsuit, knee pads definitely, elbow pads if you've got them. Because what will happen, particularly on days when it's surgy, you'll actually use your knees and elbows to brace yourself so you're not getting moved back and forth. And often that means catch bag, a fluoro one. Now I know they have camouflage bags. Don't know why they make them, because there'll be times when you'll need to leave the bag on the ground and you've gone into a cave and you come back out and you go, where's the bag? And it's camouflage, and the other thing is it's sunk into the weed. You will not find it. If you do have one of those camouflage bags or the non-fluoro kind, get a short piece of string and a little white float and hang that off the bag so that if the bag gets buried, the float's still up above the weed. So that's it in a nutshell. The other thing with the loops is give them a squirt of CRC or WD-40 down in the spring. It just makes them easy to open and close. For sure when they're new they do it, but what'll happen after your first dive, you'll actually have salt in there. Give it a good rinse of fresh water, let it dry out, and then squirt a few shots of WD-40 or Inox or CRC down there. A very thin liquid, so not lanolin or nothing that's going to be greasy. The grease will attract dirt and it'll make it harder for you to operate the loop. So any questions about the gear?
Some people recommend not using the spring at all. Like, what would you say about that? And
if you can do it,
open evenly without the spring.
Yes, it will. But what will happen in time is that the loop will deform just from the fact that after you've caught quite a few crayfish, the loop tends to get a bit of a kink in it. Anyway, you can use it without the spring. I think it's just what you get used to, really. And in time, the spring may fail in these as well.
I know scuba divers prefer it without the spring.
That's why I like the spring. That's it. If it's two-handed, you've got to have two hands to do it. So once you've got the coil on there, you can get that one-handed jamming.
Like it might hold onto the rocks, and you might have to come back up for another breath, and then you can just leave the loop down there, and the cray will still be in the loop. But without the spring,
not always.
probably won't.
I, from personal experience, I lost my loop for a day. I came back the next day, and it was actually on a bombie about 10 metres away, and the cray was still attached to the loop. But he was stuffed. But he did manage to.
But it was still there.
He was still there, yeah. Yeah, they will walk away. Just for that, yeah. If some people use 2 loops, and sometimes what happens is you'll go down into a ledge, and it'll be quite it's quite deceptive about where you've actually got to dive first. And so what you can do is you can turn the light on this one, and you just lay this down under the ledge, so that when you dive down, the light's already pointing in the direction that you can go. Same with your second loop, if you just want to use that. So there are little things like that you pick up along the way that you can use the loop for. All right, next thing, ground. I suppose this is the $64 question. Where do I find them? Besides the plastic and the wooden caves that are out there, there are plenty of natural ones. But nobody gets them from plastic or wooden caves, do they? No, because we don't want splinters on our forearms. So what sort of ground do crays like? Well, it's probably easy to work out what they don't like. They don't like sand getting whipped in their faces. So you get a day where it's surgy, there's sand getting whipped everywhere. Don't go looking under ledges. If there's sand getting whipped under a ledge, it's not going to be a cray there. Unless there happens to be a tunnel off to one side, the cray won't like it. Swim throughs, even without sand, crays don't like a back door. So if you can swim through a tunnel, they will not be in that tunnel unless, again, the tunnel has offshoots coming off it. They don't like octopus, obviously. Slaty brims, they're little square brown fish. They bite you. Generally, where you see them, the ledge is not deep enough to hold a crayfish. I would say 99 times out of 100, that's pretty well true. I mean, all these things, the sand whipping up, the swim throughs, and the slaty brim, I would say they're like 80 or 90%. They're your high probabilities of not having crayfish. Where will you find them? Okay, on a day when it's surgy, look for where it's quiet. So dive the lee of the reef or find deeper water. Look for ledges that go under a long way. Go into tunnels and see if there's an offshoot off that tunnel. On a quiet day, the top of the reef, if you can find a crater in the top of the reef, that is a really good spot for crayfish. But you'll only be able to get there on days when the swell's quite low. So that's ground where the waves are breaking. So on the calm days, go to the areas where you know where it breaks when it's on rough days and have a look around. Poke around in there for little holes or ledges that go under and they open up. And this is where your torch comes in handy. You're not looking for the jumbo so much as you're looking for big legs. So what you'll see is the big legs, because the cray will stand quite high. The jumbo will be about this high off the ground, whereas the size ones will be about that high off the ground. So give a sweep of your torch, and what you're looking for is big legs. All right. So yeah, sand whipped into a hole is a no-no. Swim throughs, not much chop. If there's a lot of buffies in a cave, you probably will get a cray in there, but you're going to have to go into that cave and you're going to have to go right to the back and have a really good look around, and there might be one little pocket right up the back there somewhere where there'll be a cave. It's not a high reward dive, but it's definitely worth a look if you're not finding them there in the easy places, or if you find that a lot of the obvious places are being excluded because of the surge. This Saturday, I think the swell's going to be about 1.4 in the morning. It's going to drop to 1.2, so you will see a little bit of surge. But again, if you can find the areas where it's in the lee of. Another thing which I use when I'm looking at new ground is ignore the small rocks. So if you've got a rock about this size, ignore this. What you're really looking for is quite a big flat rock. And then look for anything like a ledge or an overhang which could indicate that the rock is hollow in some way. But then again, you're actually going to have to probably wiggle in there and sort of don't get stuck. I haven't come to that bit, but don't get stuck. And that's another way of looking for ground that could potentially hold jumbos. So yeah, we've gone. They don't like sand. They don't like swim throughs. They don't like caves where there's lots of buffies. You won't find many crayfish in those buffy caves. You will get the occasional one or two, but you're going to be swimming through buffies. The slaty brim, they generally like shallow holes, so that's not normally a cave that's going to hold a crayfish.
Okay, Joe, you've already said that. Let's move on.
All right.
It's 10 minutes.
We're getting
already.
wound up, am I? Yeah. All right.
You're repeating yourself.
Who doesn't know how to use a cray loop?
Me.
Everyone.
He's only halfway through the board.
All right. So just a quick lesson for the cray loop.
Got another big
Yeah.
That way from me?
Yeah, that way. So cray's there. It might be backing off. Right, move your loop there. The cray keeps backing. Just wait. Just hold the loop there. All right, and he'll settle. And then you move it around the back there. Swing it over. Open it up. Bring it forward, and then just close it off. I won't do that because it'll snap your wrist shut. Once you get the hang of it, the quicker the better. You'd be surprised at what spooks them. So the quicker you can get that loop around the tail, the better. And also, once they're on the move and they're moving, it helps if you've been doing it quickly, because then you can move it quickly. You basically lasso them on the run, because they will back off. So that's a very short lesson how to use the loop. With the jumbos, poke them in the face. So what will happen is the jumbo might go back into its cave, and it might be able to go any further. But the hole is so tight that you can't get the loop behind them, and you can't get your hand in there because it's too far away. Get the loop. Don't shove it in their face. Just like love tap them a little bit. You know, like you're just trying to. It's just like. So you don't want to damage their head, but you hit them a few times in the face, and then they'll get all like this startled. And if they're not moving, hit them again, and then when they will move out. You'll have to do it on this dive, because if you come down for a second dive, they will have moved to somewhere else, and that gets them out of their hole. So that's just a little tip for if you get jumbos which you can't get to, if you want them to move out, just with the end of the loop. Don't get stuck. I've known someone who blacked out in 2 meters or 3 meters of water, got stuck in a cage. All right, so it does happen.
Well,
Do not get stuck.
It's easy to go in, but it's hard to go in.
Yeah,
reverse.
yeah. Often that you've either got to be able to wiggle out backwards, or if you can, it's great when you can turn around, but usually that's not the case. You haven't really basically to wheel out backwards and to try and keep your fins level without being able to see them and with them not getting caught in the roof. And that, if the fin does get caught in the roof, don't panic and try and swim back even harder and snap your fin. Go back into the cave and do it slowly, and then untwist your foot, because it'll get caught in the ceiling, in a crack in the ceiling, and then back out again. So don't lose your cool.
Probably just need to do more yoga, Joe, if you can't turn around in the caves. More yoga.
Or find bigger caves.
No, more yoga. Little caves, you can still turn around. Do more yoga.
Yeah, it's all right. It's easy for you to say. Yeah. I actually had the shirt front my way out of a cave once. Just what happened? There was that many bits of rock growing down from the ceiling and coming up. My fins were getting caught as I was backing out.
Yeah.
And then there was this very small gap, and what it was where the ceiling came down, but the bottom, the floor was just sand. So I swam as hard as I could and basically just charged through the sand and that gap and swam. If I had got stuck, I would have been stuck, but it was the only way out.
Note everybody, this is not how to dive safely. That's basically how to kill yourself. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, this is what you killed Joy.
Don't panic. Whatever you do, just remain calm. The more you panic, the more air you're going to use up. So dive each dive like, when you're looking for crayfish, particularly jumbos, dive each dive like you're going to see one down there. You may not, but you may not get it. You won't get a second chance, particularly around Rottnest. The crays are very educated. They're used to seeing divers. All they got to do is see a diver. Forget the torch or the loop, and then they're backing off straight away. So when you go down, be prepared, almost as though you set up expecting to see a cray every dive. You won't see it, but you won't get, a lot of times you won't get a second chance. So every dive should be a dive like you know there is a jumbo there. Your first dive is your best dive with jumbos. All right, so, okay, any questions on technique or ground? No?
I think you missed the...
I'll get a question. Often when I'm diving in a cave, I'll find it's really hard to see the tail.
Yeah.
Is there any trick to working out where the tail will be?
Yeah, put a torch on the loop.
So the torch will show the tail?
Oh yeah, so this is a...
Because wherever
this is
your
quite
loop is, yeah.
So this is not a bright torch. This has got a standard globe in it. You can get the halogen lights, but I generally find that they spook the crays a bit more. But these ones with the normal, and you just tape it on the loop, and you want the light passing more or less over the top or over to this way, not over that way, because when your loop comes through, so put your hand out again, Alex. So the light is not going into the cray's eyes; it's actually going over here. So what you'll be, this is getting a bit technical, but it'll be the penumbra of the light which will be focused on the cray. So you won't be the centre of the light, will be the penumbra, which is like the shadowy part of the light. It's enough to see the cray.
And the further back you have it, the bigger the beam is.
Yeah, but yeah, these Q40s are quite good for that because they're not a very, because they don't have the, you can get the ones with the, I think the neon bulb or the halogen bulb, but they're very bright. But these have still got the orange light.
Powerdive sell these other ones that are like as thin as your finger, but they've sold out too.
Yeah. If someone got one there, they can show it.
Well, that's what I find is the thing to
Ball
have
one
right
of
at the
those
far
ball
back
up.
where your hand is, so it's nice and bright.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's just on the, just off the light. It's not directly in their eyes.
Yeah,
and then it's just enough to see through the back of the tail and not blinding at the same time.
You will get developed night vision.
That's the.
They're the best ones.
So torch like that onto your loop, but then like I say, off to the side. Don't have it going directly at the crayfish. So in other words, it shouldn't be going through the centre of that loop. It should be off to the right hand side or the left, depending if you're right or left handed. Alright, storing crayfish. There's a few ways. Old school will store them in a hessian sack. These days on ice, or if you've got it, a live bait tank with an aerator. Great way for keeping crays alive. And to be honest, that's how they transport them across from the Eurolis to the mainland on the Island Leader. On a hot day, hey?
Just so you can kill them later.
Yeah, just so you can kill them later.
That's torture.
No, it's not.
Prolonged.
Think of it as purifying.
Torches
Freshness.
You're purging them.
Yeah, cleaning out their seasoning.
All right, so on a hot day, definitely one or two. Forget the wet hessian sack. You're going to need ice on a hot day. Killing. I thought there was more than one way, but apparently no. Freeze them first. Half an hour to an hour, or half an hour, or thereabouts. Freeze them before you boil them.
Ice slurry is actually better.
Yeah, or ice slurry. Yeah, well that'll get them down below freezing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well that actually drowns them.
Does it?
They're sudden.
Salt water or fresh water?
Either.
Ice slurry should be salt water, shouldn't it?
It should be,
Yeah.
but if you've only got fresh water, then fresh water. But it actually drowns them. The sudden temperature change actually stops them from
I
being
do
able
that on the
to
boat.
absorb.
I've only started doing that recently.
They do kill them for transport, so
Yeah.
they do the slow, bring them down.
So
slowly.
just from a humane point of view, if you can, try and put them on ice before you boil them or before you kill them,
Yeah.
or cut them in half to butterfly them to do them on the barbecue.
Yeah.
Even if it's 20 minutes, every bit will help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
Great as well if you don't want them to lose their legs.
yeah. Now we'll get to the cooking and the eating part. So I steam my crays. The small ones I'll steam 10 to 12 minutes in a big pot. But the large ones, they'll be 15 to 25 depending on how big they are.
What, large to a kilo or?
No, large is probably, I don't know, 1.5, 2 to 3.5, 4 kilos.
What do you call a jumbo?
Over 2 kilos.
kilos.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
That's the rule, yeah. That's the one we've made up. All right, now sometimes what happens is you get black stuff on the crays when you put them in the fridge.
That's Tasbot. Just scrape it off.
Yeah, Stanley trimmer helps for those little hard to get bits as well. That don't scrape off easily. Once you've cooked the cray, hang it head down, and the shit should drain out of the head. On the jumbos, the best part of the crayfish by far is the legs. Cook them up that night. Riley, are you here?
Yeah.
Have you you've microwaved them, haven't you?
Yeah.
And explain the microwaving way of cooking. This is quite a good way of cooking because sometimes it can be hard to separate the meat from the shell in the jumbo. And Riley and Caleb have hit on this good way of cooking them.
Called popcorn legs, and you sort of want them at like room temperature. Found if you have them too cool and you put them in, we tend to put them in a little plastic box because it'll make a mess in your microwave.
Yeah.
Or you can wrap them in a paper towel or something, but it doesn't need long like a jumbo leg. Maybe I'll put them in about 30 seconds, by 20 they'll pop and literally pull them out straight away. As soon as you hear that pop, it'll shoot the meat out like a spaghetti.
How many legs can you put in there at a time?
Oh, I just do one. I mean,
Do you?
I haven't tried many
Okay.
more, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just in case they cook at different rates, because sometimes it'll be earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And if you leave them too long, actually the microwave cooks you really quick.
Yeah.
And because the meat's not that thick.
Yeah.
If you do it for the whole 30 seconds and you don't hear it pop, you can overcook it.
Yep.
So I've found if they're too cold and you put them in there, it doesn't tend to pop.
Doesn't
so you
pop,
sort of want to
yeah.
let them settle to room temperature before you put them in there. But
Yeah.
it cooks them. As soon as you get that pop, it seems to be, you'll hear them steaming.
Yeah.
They sort of steam up in there and it just shoots it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Shoots it out hot.
So it's one of the joys of getting a jumbo is getting the legs. You cook them up, and you've got a big bowl, and basically you just.
Why sometimes when you cook jumbo legs?
I don't know why they get stuck.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Why sometimes they stuck? It's weird. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Jumbo, I normally pull out about 15 minutes and rip all the legs off, then put the ribs back in to keep cooking.
Yeah.
And usually they're overcooked if they're stuck in the legs.
Does it depend on how long you stored it in the fridge? Like whether you cook it fresh straight away or whether you cook it the next day?
I know.
I found it differs if you ice them or just put them in the, or just take them home and put them in the fridge.
So which is better?
Icing is better.
Icing is better.
They come out loose better.
Yeah. Okay.
But it does depend
I think
on
the fridge dehydrates them and that causes them to stick.
Yeah.
The fridge is, the new style of fridge dehydrate them.
I also found that if you don't eat them straight away as well.
They dehydrate.
Like if you have the towel as a meal and then put the cray head and the legs and the horns in the fridge, and then the next day, it's
better or worse?
No,
it's worse, way
it's
worse.
That makes
Yeah.
sense what Graham's saying.
As you said, Graham, just dries it out.
So we've got a consensus on how to cook them. So cold on ice, and then.
Well, if you actually peel the crayfish, like, so you can get all 3 sections out of it, as one whole piece, you've mastered it.
Yeah, good luck with that.
You can do it.
Hours practicing that.
You can do it. You just have to get soft shell crays.
Eat on the go.
Whole lot in the deep
Put the shell
fryer.
back together.
All right, so that's the most popular way and the easiest and most convenient way of cooking them. Other way is to butterfly them, and again, before you chop in half, put them on ice. Butterfly them, put them on a barbecue, shell side down, and cook it through the shell, and then until the meat's cooked. When the meat's cooked, you can either have it as it is, or you can just brush it with a bit of butter. Garlic butter is what I prefer, and you turn them over and put the meat side down with the garlic butter on the cooked meat, and give it about 30 seconds or a minute till that meat goes brown from the butter.
I used to do that for years, but I had a chef come around last night and
oh really?
Told you it was rubbish. And she or whatever, it's he said oven at 200 degrees, get it really hot, split them and put them in for legal crays for 15 minutes. The bigger ones for 20. That's the best way I've ever had it because it cooks it from all angles and straight in. Rather than barbecue, it's just heat from the bottom.
Yeah.
It's not consistent. Barbecue, you just can't sort of.
Okay, so in the oven.
That's what I've been doing. Really good. Doing the same thing, but making a base or a brine up, put it inside the shell with the meat, so the oven cooks it with the brine flavour to it, like lemon honey or something like that.
Yeah,
some flavour through there as well.
Yeah, so that seems to be all right. And just 5 minutes, and everybody can talk to everyone, and you can all be best friends again. But so Alex's way does seem pretty good, and what Carl's explained, you can actually put whatever marinade or whatever flavours that you want on top of the meat when it's still raw.
1.5 times the amount of time you'd boil one for.
So yeah, so if you're boiling one for 15 minutes, you're probably going to be cooking a big one for 22.5, 23 minutes. 200 degrees.
Style as well.
Sashimi style. Yeah, well there is other ways. So you can do pickled lobster, which I saw Alex put a recipe up on Facebook the other day. Pickled lobster is delicious. Very good giveaways at Christmas. You give someone a little jar of pickled lobster, they'll love you for life. Deep fried lobster bites, lobster salad with balsamic vinegar and olive oil dressing. And if you want to keep them and to freeze them, cook them first, drain them, wrap them in newspaper, put them in a plastic bag.
Don't cook them. Have them raw.
You want them raw in the freezer?
I do them raw in the freezer.
Okay, raw in the freezer, cooked in the freezer. And this is one of those arguments.
You just got to stop them from getting frostbite.
Yeah, so wrap them in newspaper. It stops, and that stops the horns from puncturing the plastic bags.
And the shell,
put them in
shells covers the meat, so it's fine.
I don't think so.
Sorry.
And just quickly about the comp, looks like we'll have it on Saturday at this stage, so the weather is.
What about the comp? People here don't know about the comp.
Oh, for those that don't know about the crayfish comp that we've got on Saturday, it's been sponsored by Powerdive. Wherever Aaron here is. And Dive and Fish. We're having it Saturday. The weigh-in is at Rottnest at 1 o'clock. We were going to have it at the Army Jetty, but after discussions with Alex, we're thinking that so long as people don't cut sick and drink, basically you're not allowed to drink in front of the pub unless you're in the pub.
Or on the wall.
Or on the wall. So we're going to do the weigh-in at the Quokka Arms again this year because of the shade and the convenience and the food and the location.
And the scenery.
Just don't be drinking on the beach or on the wall with beers that you bought in the pub. If you want to have a beer when you come back in after you beach the boat, sit in the boat and have a few beers.
So that's a Cray comp for paid up members as well.
Yeah, for financial
Hey,
members.
we pay $14 a beer then, do we?
No, bring your own. Bring your own.
Bring your own. We're going to drink it in the boat rather than...
Yeah,
Put a beer in a Coke can and then...
So, for those of you that haven't... For those of you that haven't moored up at Rottnest, you'll need an anchor from the stern and an anchor from the bow. And so basically the boats are side by side along the beach.
You need a mooring permit as well?
You will need to get a landing permit. Yeah.
It's recommended, but I've never got one.
Yeah. Technically, everybody has to buy a landing permit. Every single body.
Got one though. That's all right, isn't it?
You can get one. No, it's not. Everyone on the boat has to have one.
Joe, that's not true. If the boat's got one, then you can have as many people as you want.
Sanctuary, you required one. Doesn't matter if
You don't have to land. You're right. You just go into the Rottnest waters. You need a permit.
Inside the reserve line.
you should be right.
Inside the reserve line. So there's a reserve line which is 800, which is the further one out. If you're inside that, technically you're supposed to have a park as well.
Yeah. All right. So this year we'll have the weigh-in as we have had in previous years out front of the Clocker Arms, and 1 o'clock. Make sure you got someone at the sign-off table.